guys, and welcome back to Betwixt the Books. We are here with a very, very late reading roundtable. This has been in the works for over a month. It's been a minute. We've had some scheduling issues that have pushed this back over and over again, but we are finally here to discuss some diverse speculative picks. If you haven't been to a reading roundtable before, Gretchen and I bring on some of our bookish friends to talk about the things that we've been reading. Sometimes, like this time, we give a loose theme to the episode. In this case, we chose diverse speculative picks, so something sci-fi, fantasy, horror, magical realism-y, something beyond the scope of regular life, but also by a author of color or otherwise diverse pick. And sometimes they're unthemed, which usually comes after a themed one. But this time we do have a small theme. As always, we are going to go around and give you a little bit of a taste of what we normally read and who we are, so you can maybe pick and choose who you would like to hear talk about a book. And then after that, we'll go around and talk about our books themselves in more detail. If you want to, go grab a nice warm beverage, put us on your second monitor, and just listen while you're doing something else, because we're going to be chatting for about an hour. And as always, I'll hand it over to Gretchen to start us off in our introductions.
Hi, I'm Gretchen. Sometimes I'm on the channel if I manage to read a book. That hasn't happened a lot recently, so I haven't been putting out a lot of videos. It's fine. It's fine. Everything is fine. My mental health is A-okay. So things to know about me when I'm usually reading. I'm usually reading either contemporary romance or some kind of history nonfiction. When Michaela and I started this channel 13 years ago today, apparently, according to YouTube notifications. Thanks, YouTube. Never ask a channel its age. I was reading a lot of YA fantasy. So that was like my wheelhouse. I love that a lot. And I've been trying to get back into reading more fantasy. It hasn't really happened for me yet either, mostly in the fact that I'm not, reading. But some things that I definitely am not a fan of usually are novellas. We have read a couple of them on this channel. I have liked maybe exactly one of them, which was T. Kingfisher's What Moves the Dead, which was incredible, so good. But usually I'm cranky about a novella. Guys, I brought a novella today. This lighting is bad also, just ignore this. But I have to say, my complaint about this novella is not my normal novella complaint. So I will entice you with that and turn it over to Emily.
Hi, I've been here before. I have been trying to read more in the past couple of years. Grad school really obliterated the ability to just read. The attention span just is not there anymore. Plus I work like a corporate 9 to 5, and it is shocking how much how much I am using a brain, but I have to build content, so it's not. My job is not the corporate send email, attend meeting, send email, go home. I wish. God, I wish. Anyway, can't get distracted. I mostly read speculative fiction. I like fantasy a lot. If you looked at my story graph the past 2 years, it would be like, oh, you read manga and nothing else. And that, at this point, would probably be about true. But my bookshelves very much beg to differ, so that's my saving grace. I brought a book of short stories today by an author that I have been mildly obsessed with for several years now.
Hi, I'm Des. I've been here so many times, I'm not even going to ramble over things anymore. It's fine. I'm Michaela's problem, that's all you need to know. So I usually go for fantasy or horror. I was on a horror kick for a while. Now I'm kind of back on my fantasy kick, but more high fantasy than romantasy. Big fan of LGBT stuff, so that's usually in my wheelhouse. I don't like speculative fiction or magical realism. And ironically, that's what I brought today. So there's the...
All right. And hi, I'm Michaela. I'm also often here. The last couple of months I have been in migraine hell, where it has been difficult to do much of anything other than lay in the dark and hope that I'm not dying. So I haven't done a bunch of videos as of recently, but when I do make videos, I'm quite often talking about horror, sci-fi, queer books. That's sort of my house. I am bringing short stories today as well. Mine are light sci-fi, speculative magical realism, but I do tend to like those, unlike Des. So that's where I live. I was and have always been a big, what the hell is going on in this book? We're going for it. Hell yeah. Weirdness abounds. Good.
You should just be proud I read one willingly.
I am proud.
Without you even trying to get me to read it.
Yeah, exactly.
Progress.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a step ahead of where I am, because every magical realism book I've ever read has been forced on me by Michaela or Taylor for book club. So, to their great surprise, I have not yet liked one.
It's not surprise.
I don't think I have either, actually, now that I think about it.
Unlike to the opposite of Michaela, I like knowing what's going on. At least like the vague contours of the thing. So, you know. But anyway, there's some good rants on this channel from the past 13 years. But anyway, I can't get over that.
I feel like I should make a playlist that's just like, we broke Gretchen again, and it's just any video that's like you alone in the corner being upset about the book.
We should have figured out a way for like different, like either your picks or Taylor's picks for bibliomancy, where like I managed to just like remove myself to the tiny corner, just like
shrink yourself down.
Oh boy. Yeah. Hey man, again, I willingly brought a novella, and you're not going to believe what I have to say about it. So, can I tell you about it?
Go for it.
Okay. So, I brought today a book called The Black God's Drums by P. Djèlí Clark. I know P. Djèlí Clark because they wrote a book called Ring Shout. I haven't actually read that. But that one I think is maybe one of their more popular titles. You have it, I think, on your shelf somewhere.
I definitely do. I read it this year, back in February for Black History Month.
Yeah. I did realize in finding this book that P. Djèlí Clark has also written ancient Egyptian steampunk-based fantasy, and I'm really into that. So
you need to share that with me later.
Yeah, I'll go back and find it. They've written a lot of books, so I'll go find it. But so this one is a novella that is also, I think, technically alternative American history steampunk. So it takes place in an alternate New Orleans, and the Civil War, like, just kind of after the Civil War in our timeline, but in this timeline, the Civil War has not gone at all the way that it goes in our history books. There's a lot of different factions that are going on. There's like the Union, yes, but also the Confederacy is still kind of alive, but also there's been some like different breakaway states, and it's very much more like city-state factional in the entire like global hemisphere than what we have right now. The main character is a wall scaling girl who calls herself Creeper, which to me just felt uncomfortable because I felt like that just was like a rude name, but that is the name that she has chosen. And she lives on the streets in New Orleans, and it is her dream to join the crew of an airship. And she ends up in possession because she's like, sneaking around on the streets doing her like thievery, like pickpocketing thing. And she learns that the Confederacy is potentially about to become, get information on this weapon called the Black God's Thunder. She doesn't know what it is. It's essentially like a nuclear bomb, and like the closest things like that. And she's like, okay, I think I can sell this to the highest bidder and maybe like use that as leverage to get myself onto this like airship called the Midnight Robber that has a famous female Haitian captain. The other half of this is that Creeper has a voice in her head that is the voice of Oya, the African Orisha of the wind and storms. So she has like kind of an ability to kind of conjure some storm power and like kind of like feel the elements in a certain way. And come to find out that this captain that she really idolizes has like the sister wife of Oya is a different, like a water goddess who also speaks. It was a really evocative world. But what is really, really funny about this is that normally every single time Michaela and I read a novella, I'm like, there's not enough here. Like, there's not enough. It's not like they either like didn't do enough of the world building. Like, I have a lot of questions or something like that. And again, that's not necessarily every novella I've ever read's fault. I think there are some that we have read that have not been good ones. But like, I'm just a person who like, if I'm going to read particularly a fantasy, I want like some deep world building, which is just not what a novella is for. This novella has too much world building. Never said this before in my life about a novella. And I think the issue was that there's enough world building, particularly in how Clark has constructed like the political alignment of all of these factions and the Haitians and the Dominicans and the Confederacy and this like shoot off group from the Confederacy and like the Union and like you end up getting a whole like, and then also all of these different people who have like, because obviously this African goddess is a thing in this, and then there's like the Haitian gods, and there is some discussion about how like, you know, Creeper is African American. And the captain of the ship is Haitian, and like their gods are connected because they're both African gods or goddesses, but at the same time the ways that they are worshipped in these different places have changed because of the slave trade and diaspora and all of that. So like that was really interesting, but also you're learning about multiple pantheons of gods as well. And I don't think most of it was necessary to understand this book. This book had some really great characters. Like Creeper is taken care of by these two women who are ostensibly nuns, but like are nuns who are like in their kitchen cooking their own poison and very clearly are like spy masters. Like they know everything there is to know. And so the captain says multiple times like, are you sure y'all are nuns? And I'm like, yeah. It's just like, no, they were really lovely. They had a great relationship. So there's some really interesting characters, but I just feel like the interesting character relationships and even the action of the book, which in the end felt pretty minimal, was just super weighted down by like these multiple paragraphs of like understanding geopolitical world politics in a way that just wasn't necessary for it was interesting. It was an interesting idea, but like with the way that it was described, you would think that you were reading Game of Thrones, not a novella. And so like, yes, one of my complaints with the novella often is I wish this was a full novel, but in this case it was almost like there clearly is the world for a full novel here, and I think the way that it ends up feeling is that like there's a world for a full novel here, but maybe like Clark couldn't figure out the story for the full novel, and so like had this like little idea about which I also think could have been like, okay, after this Creeper ends up on this like not the spaceship, but like the airship, and then they go hello. So yeah, it's really, I did really enjoy it. I thought it was really interesting. I love history, and therefore I also love when there's like this alternative history going on and like a different way this could have gone and a different way that like with the steampunk elements as well was really awesome. So I certainly wouldn't say like don't read it, because I really did like it, but at the same time it just felt so unbalanced to the point where I was like skipping through some things where I'm like, okay, I'm on page 10 of like understanding the African god diaspora. Like, there's potentially a nuclear bomb that's about to level New Orleans, and I'd like to talk about that some more, please.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really it was the kind of book that I think, going back to that steampunk like Egyptian one, like makes me want to read a full novel by this author, because they're clearly not lacking for really interesting and complex ideas, just not delivered necessarily in the right way in this novella. But I am really glad. I definitely would never have read this if it weren't for this roundtable. And so for that, I am grateful, because it felt very out of my wheelhouse and very different, and really felt like I was pushing myself to read something different. So if anyone has read any other like of Peter Djèlí Clark's like steampunk stuff, let me know down in the comments. Like, should I go do that? Because like, I'm interested if I can find the brain power for a full novel. So let me know. But that's what I read.
It's interesting because having read Ring Shout, which I enjoyed, but I had, I think, the opposite problem where I felt like I wanted more information about that world. Also a novella, so similar things, but it like was much more plot focused, I think, than the one that you read. Yeah. You might find that one interesting. I know that you aren't a horror fan, but it's not like it's horror in the like same way that Sinners is horror, I would say. Like, it's societal social horror commentary more so than like spooky monster or like gross gore. Like, it's not that stuff.
Yeah.
My turn, question mark?
Your turn.
Okay. So I have the short story collection Sorry, Please, Thank You by Charles Yu, who is a Chinese American author that I have been obsessed with since 2016, probably.
Okay.
He has also done some TV work. He's got a few novels now. Interior Chinatown also got turned into like a TV series of some sort, that I have not gotten around to because I am garbage at watching TV. But he was really heavily involved in Lodge 49, I think. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was only one episode credit, and I'm giving him more credit because I think he's incredible. But anyway, he was involved in Lodge 49, which is a show that my wife and I really like. His novel, How to Live Safely in a Science Fictional Universe, is one of my favorite books of the century, frankly. And I tweeted that at him after I read it, and he responded. So anyway, moving on. So this particular book of short stories it's not new. It's from 2012. And I have not gotten all the way through it. I have read the first set of short stories in the Sorry collection. All three of which are really interesting in really different ways. The first one is called Standard Loneliness Package, and it is about a person who works for a company that allows rich people to make someone else experience their misery for a set period of time for a set amount of money. So, like, your cousin's funeral costs a certain amount of money, but your brother's funeral costs like 19 times that. Right. Your mom's funeral is going to be way more than that still, right? Like, all of these things, various, like, your ex's wedding that you have to go to, like, that has its own price, and like all of these things have packages. And the protagonist is someone who works at this company, and he like is kind of talking about the things that he goes through every day and how it doesn't really bother him, but in a way that's like, it's because you have permanently disassociated from yourself already and you just are in denial about it right now. But he kind of like he falls into an obsession with a coworker, um, who like at no point is ever actually affectionate or interested, but because she doesn't tell him to take a hike every single time he attempts, he's like, well, cool, now we're in a relationship. It's a whole thing. Like, there's a reason it's called standard loneliness package. But like the way that the story progresses through, like him trying to like kind of make sense of himself as being for 8 hours a day random strangers pain, and then having a relationship that is not really a relationship, and like no matter how hard he tries, like he cannot get her to connect with him, and he doesn't understand it, and it's all of these things. And then like there's kind of a through line in the story about like everybody has a breaking point. When you do this job, like everybody has a breaking point, and if you don't catch things in time, like you can permanently like remove somebody from their brain. Someone did the unthinkable, and I don't have to like I think everybody knows what the worst possible case scenario is for making somebody else exist in like take your experience from you. Um and so like there's a point where one of his coworkers has to be like medically carried out of the business and never comes back. And as he is kind of dealing with effectively the end of his relationship in this story, because it does come to a close within the story, you see him kind of start to hit that break as well, but in a different way. And like it's a really interesting expansion and like stretch of the way that we sympathize and empathize with each other, and the ways that we demand things of each other and choose to make things fit that don't, because we want it to fit really, really, really bad.
Yeah.
And like the inherent frustration of being forced to confront the fact that it was never actually an answer just because you decided it was one. It never was an answer. It was never the thing that you like have been conceptualizing it as this whole time. And the like there's a his like ex-girlfriend, I think her mom dies, and basically he offers to take the time for her like for free. And she doesn't, I don't remember like entirely, the details are unimportant, but the point is that while he's like experiencing this hour on her behalf, she is also thinking through all of like the course of their relationship and how she saw him and interacted with him, and how this whole thing like existed for her, and how he seems to other people, or at least to, you know, to her, etc. And like that is that ultimate moment of empathy for him where it finally kind of occurs, like it clicks into place for him in a way that I think is really beautiful and also absolutely tragic. And it's a really like it's also the longest story in that part of the collection. And I got through reading it, and I turned the page to see like to the next story, and I was just like, sorry indeed, Charles, you. Because it starts the sorry section, and I'm like, yeah, you should apologize. God damn it. Anyway, so that one was beautiful and tragic, and I really enjoyed it. And the second one was called First Person Shooter, which is not, it's not actually as bad as you think. Basically, he's in a grocery store, like the protagonist is in a grocery store with his girlfriend when like they work there. Sorry, they are employees, and they find a finger in an aisle, and so he picks it up, and like is like, well, then like a zombie woman kind of comes shambling by, and he's like, oh, is this yours? Like, and like he just customer services for this zombie woman who does not appear to understand that she's a zombie, and so he takes her over to the women's clothing section and like helps her get a new outfit to go on a date, apparently, because she was also trying to buy makeup. Meanwhile, his coworker is like hunting the department store for anything to use as a weapon to take out this zombie that she's convinced is going to murder them because zombie literature, you know. And this guy's just like, I don't know, seems like she's got a date, I guess. Like, she's trying to go on a date. I don't know. And so, like, he's just helping her. And then at the end, like, you know, his coworker comes back and is like, get out of the way, I'm gonna get her. And he's like, you don't need to. And she's like, she's gonna kill us. And he's like, she's just going on a date, actually. And, like, she pays at a register and then shambles away out of the store. And he's just like, I wonder if she's actually going to go on that date. And that's kind of the end of the story. And it's just, like, that's the thing I really love about Charles Yu is that he manages to take, like, a really mundane moment and make it absolutely absurd, but also very real at the same time. And, like, there's just something really delightful I find about the like way he constructs the scene, and so I am really looking forward to reading the rest of the stories in this collection, but reading has been challenging lately, so I've not.
That's also just like I feel like effort all of us who have gone through the customer service gauntlet of like no matter what is happening I must customer service. The customer is always right. I have been tortured in this job previously. Like, I'm just gonna keep, because that would be me. I would just be like, yep, this is a day that ends in Y in American customer service. That's
you know, when the zombie goes shambling out and you're like, you know, I've helped smellier customers. Who's next? I'm sorry, I worked at a Walmart for 3 weeks, and then I quit because 15 minutes before a shift having a panic attack, because I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. So that's what I've got.
I haven't read any Charles Yu, but I think I've had Interior Chinatown on my TBR for a while. I don't know if I own anything physically, but it's definitely an author that I've looked into and am aware of. So I'll have to add some stuff. You think this is a good introduction as like
the
short stories? Yeah. Or better to do a novel first?
I think it really just depends on what you prefer to read in general. Like if you are a person who wants like a light lift to experience what an author's writing is like before committing to a novel. Not that his novels are all that long or hard to commit to frankly. Like they're pretty light reads on the whole. Well, having only read science fictional universe, I can't really say that definitively, I guess, in fairness, but like that one was a really like light, wonderful. I'm very biased. It was a light, easy read as far as I am concerned. There are parts of it that like get technically jargony because it's talking about time travel, and he's using like grammatical structures to describe the movement through time and space, through space-time. And that novel is set in like a universe of alternate universes and parallel universes, and the one that this story is theoretically set in is itself incomplete because the makers of it like abandoned it halfway, and so like not all of the equations are exactly correct and not all of the like pieces quite line up, and so it's a little bit glitchy, and like part of the conceit is that like the world glitched sort of in half, and now New York, San Francisco, and Tokyo are all one city, and they were like abruptly just like connected, and like down the middle centers of buildings, apartments just mashed together, people like lost their whole families, basically relocated halfway across the world, and like everyone is just left to deal with that and carry on because that's the world, right? So like that one is a wild ride, but it's an easy read. Sorry, please, thank you punches you in the face before it moves on to anything nice. So there's that to be aware of.
Fair enough.
I enjoyed being punched in the face, but it was a punch in the face. There was an ED on enjoying that. I was not a universal I enjoy. It was I enjoyed being punched in the face.
This one.
This one.
Miss Des, what do you have for us?
So I read Lost Souls Meet Under a Full Moon. I'm going to butcher her name, but it's Mizuki Tsujimura? I don't know. She is a Japanese author who usually writes mystery novels for both kids and adults. this technically has a mystery aspect to it, but like for the readers and not really the people in the story.
Okay.
And it's also, like I said, magical realism, which isn't my thing, but you know, it was $1.99 on Kindle, so here we are. Yep, that's seriously how it happened. So what it's about is a teenager who arranges meetings with the dead and the living. He's called the go-between, and what he does is anytime someone contacts him asking for a meeting with the dead, he arranges it at a really fancy hotel. But the rules are each reunion is a one-time arrangement that the dead can refuse. The service is free, and the meeting must take place during a full moon, and so it lasts that full 8 hours. They also only get one visit in their entire life, so they have to like choose wisely. So there's 4 reunions that happen. One is a woman who is obsessed with a celebrity that died, and she meets him, meets her. And then there's a resentful eldest son who wants to ask his mother to unearth the deeds to a plot of land. And then a teenage girl who blames herself for her best friend's death. It was her fault. That's a spoiler. I'm sorry. I'm still mad about it.
Wow.
And then a weary businessman seeking answers about his fiance's disappearance days after he proposed. So with each meeting, there's different clues about the boy himself, and his own story is eventually like revealed at the end, kind of. So it was okay. Wasn't really anything to write home about. I was more invested in the stuff about the boy and like how the go-between worked than any of the people who had these meetings. I thought it was weird using your meeting to meet with a celebrity who apparently decided that was what she was going to pick. I don't know, whatever. Because the people they meet with also don't get another meeting. They also only get one. So that was weird. The one with the son and his mom was just weird, cringy. I don't know. It was just painful, like in the sense that like, oh, the way they're acting is like gross and is too real, and I'm not a fan. The one with the girl and the best friend obviously pissed me off. That was, I think, the only one that I was actually somewhat invested in. And then the last one, I read this book 3 months ago, and I don't even really remember what that one was about, so clearly it wasn't that noteworthy.
Yeah.
But like I said, I was invested in the boy. I thought his story was a lot more entertaining. There's some backstory about his family, their history, and then how he ended up doing what he does. There's also a second book, which I didn't know when I read this first one, but I'm not going to read it because I don't care enough.
Yeah.
Like I said, it wasn't a bad book, but it wasn't like the best book I've ever read, so I gave it, I think, like 3 stars because I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. And the redemption was like kind of like the background lore with the boy who arranges the meetings.
Translated, I'm assuming, right? Because you said it was a Japanese author.
Yeah, it's translated.
I'm probably the only person that ever thinks about this, but do you think that the issues were translator based, or just like the core story wasn't super interesting to you? Because sometimes you can tell, sometimes you can't tell. Sometimes it's,
Say the core story.
Okay.
Because most of like, all except for the one that made me mad and the boy's story, they were like, I thought the characters were assholes.
Okay.
And not the dead people that they were talking to. Like, they were just like, I don't know. I just something about the selfishness of it, I think, and like how awful they were to these people who are already dead. Just didn't.
And now they're asking more of these dead people.
Yeah. Vibe. So,
I mean, do you think that was meant to be the point?
Yeah, like the
or
social commentary.
Was it just like?
It was probably meant to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot, because in a way it almost, even though it's not necessarily because there was an overarching thing, it is in some way like a book with short stories in it. as well, which is interesting because Michaela and I were talking about this before you guys got here about like how you review a short story collection, which is so much more difficult because you could have a really good story. Like Michaela and I have done this where, you know, we read Reservoir Bitches last year for our translated book in our challenge, and we both came out on the side of like only the one story was good.
Yes.
And that one story was fantastic.
Yes.
Like 10 out of 10 would say everyone in the world should read it. And then the rest of the stories were like, why am I here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt about this one, because it essentially is like a collection of short stories. So, I mean, I didn't care about most of it, but I was super invested in the best friend one. That one I actually like flew through. And then I was back to like, okay, whatever. And then we got to the part about the boy, and I was like, what? And I'm like, why wasn't the whole book just about him? I don't care about these people.
Yeah.
I care about him. So I think that was my thing. Like, obviously I think the message got across because that probably was the core message, but I was just like,
sometimes that's hard though, because the Tori Peters, I think, had a collection of short stories that I read, and like their point is that they write trans characters that are kind of like unlovable, and the point is to show them as complete people who can be selfish and can be, you know, whatever. But it's so difficult to read so many stories back to back to back of all of these different type of assholes that it's like, I understand what you're trying to do here, but it makes for an uncomfortable and kind of like, how do I rate this? Because I did not have a good time, and that was the point, was for me to not have a good time. Yeah.
It was
like,
so,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I wish I could say I didn't like it because it made me feel something, but mostly I was just bored.
Fair.
Sorry, Gretchen, what were you saying?
Oh no, I was just reminded of our last reading roundtable when Taylor was talking about wanting to read things that explicitly just like were going to hurt her.
A hostile experience explicitly, yes.
Yeah.
Hostile to the reader.
Yeah.
Like,
And that
I'm going
that
to punish you for choosing
vibe.
to read this book. Yeah.
See, I do enjoy books like that. That makes me happy.
That is not my vibe, I'll tell you what.
No. But yeah, I think that's the difference between like something that is trying to be hostile or like, you know, deep or whatever, and then you're just bored. Or like when Michaela and I read How High, what was that collection?
How High We Go in the Dark.
Yeah, that one. I always get it mixed up with I'll Be Gone in the Dark, which is a true crime book,
not the same.
but they're very similar titles.
Yes.
And like that book felt hostile to me, but like I respect the hell out of it.
Yeah.
But I was like, this is really well written. I hate everything that's happening, and I'm supposed to hate everything that's happening.
Yeah.
But it's like such a fine line of like, is this just not my vibe, or am I just bored?
Yeah. All right, my turn.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna leave us on a high note because I enjoyed what I read. I had a good time. So I read Lesser Known Monsters of the 21st Century by Kim Fu. It is a collection of short stories. I rated it on Storygraph 4.5 stars, but I told Gretchen before we were filming that I might bump that up to a 5. It's just really difficult for me to give short story collections a 5 because in my mind I'm like, not every story is a 5-star story in like any collection ever. But then at the same time, I think there's only 2 stories in this entire collection that I was kind of meh on, and every single other one I had things to think about or like really stayed with me, which is like a really high ratio of I enjoyed most of these stories. And since there was a good number of 5-star stories, should I then just sort of discount the 2 that were kind of okay and just give it 5 stars, even though, which she said every chapter of a novel is good, but you sort of review that holistically. So yes, I should probably bump up that star rating, and I may. It is, as it says, a bunch of short stories that each of them is sort of tackling a topic or theme about modern life that is very uncomfortable or has grown negatively, using a speculative or mildly fantastical element to sort of push that idea. So the first story is a transcript of a conversation between a person who works at a company that basically does like VR experiences for people and someone who wants to do that experience. I'm presuming they have paid for it and that they want to do it. That woman just wants to spend some time with her dead mom, but the employee says that they're not allowed to have people have experiences with dead people because the way that the VR experience works is that it uses what your own brain thinks of that person. So if you know they're dead, when you go into this thing, you may see them dead. Like, the way that that gets manifested. So, like, they're not supposed to do that for someone. If they know the person knows that they're dead. They talk a little bit about one time where the person didn't disclose that they were going to be talking to a dead person. And then because they were at the scene of the very violent car accident that killed the person, that their loved one was then there in that capacity as that. So, which is a reason why they can't do that. But it devolved into a discussion about consent and corporate oversight, because they discussed, like, I'm not allowed to have a conversation with my dead mom. I just want to have, like, a mundane walk through a botanical garden with my mom one last time. But I can have sex with a dragon or, whatever else. There's, like, rules, but they're arbitrary rules. And the reason they say that you can't talk to dead people outside of the seeing somebody being dead is that it can also be addictive, because then you can't let go of the grief because you'll constantly keep coming back to talk to the dead person. And it comes down to, he says, it's a legal issue. Like, you could sue us for this because it is addictive. But if somebody comes in and becomes addicted to having sex with a dragon, like, that then looks badly on them. Like, they were already a degenerate and they're just using our service wrong, even though inherently this service is addictive, no matter what you're doing, because it is always going to be bringing you into a space that is not real. Every single person that uses it is going to become addicted, and it's just whether or not you have the funds to pay for it over and over again. Which was, like, very interesting, this idea of, like, creating virtual worlds for people, and the AI thing of, like, if you create something that yeses everyone and they become addicted to it, like, what's the liability of the company versus the liability of the individual person. It also reflects on things like social media, which we know is addicting, but we're still pushing on everyone. But then if you're addicted to social media, it's not that we've made social media to be addictive, it's that you have a character flaw. So every single story in this collection has something along those lines. There was one story I initially had just borrowed the audio from the library and was listening to it. And then I heard, hold on, let me look at the story here. 20 Hours is the title of the story. It's, like, pretty smack dab in the middle, a little bit before the middle. And when I listened to that story, I paused it and had to buy the book because I knew I was going to want to, like, highlight it and come back and listen to it again. And that story is from the perspective of a man who has just killed his wife, but it's okay because they own a 3D printer that allows them to reprint themselves if they die in a traumatic way very quickly. So it's following him for the 20 hours that he's waiting for his wife to reprint. And it's discussing how she has killed him once, and that was it. And he talks about his experience with it. But he has killed her multiple times, and she has killed herself multiple times and been reprinted over and over again. He sort of muses on, like, his experience with it was, like, he got shot in the face with a shotgun, so he experienced, like, falling backwards and then just woke up on the table in their basement. Like, there was just, like, cut to black moment. And he said that she said that's how it is for her as well, that there's, like, some sort of awareness of having died, but then you just wake up the next moment. But he's like, maybe she experiences something more, like, spiritual or something else is going on with her, because why else would she do it over and over and over again? But it is also discussing his mentality about why he keeps killing his wife over and over again. He says something along the lines of, no, actually, I highlighted it here. I had poisoned her, a great wallop of poison in her morning coffee, so I didn't have the defense of passion, a momentary loss of reason. Poison took forethought. Poison said, I wanted to be apart from you for a while. Then why not just leave the house? Why not go for a walk? No, it said more than that. Poison said, I wanted you not to exist for a while. I wanted to move through the world without you in it. And this idea of lack of consequence, of like, he is able to take out his rage on her over and over and over again, and she will always come back. There is the description of this one time where he beat her over the head with a baseball bat, but because of the way that the system works, you have to die within a certain number of minutes, otherwise your body can't reconnect with this new body if it takes too long to die. So he's getting more and more scared that she isn't going to die fast enough, and is then beating her more and more and more. And just sitting here in this moment of like, he is utterly terrified that she will not wake up while actively killing her. Like, the disconnect there was so insane. And it was just such an interesting idea. There's also discussions in that one about how only rich people can afford this, how they're quiet millionaires. They're like people that live on your block in the nice house in the suburbs. They're not mansion billionaires, but they have enough money to afford to pay for the data upkeep of getting their brain scanned every 10 seconds so that it can then go into the body with like as close to the point of death versus not, and pay for the machine and pay for the materials for having to print a new body and pay for the people to come and pick up your old body and dispose of it. And it just becomes only certain people are protected from these traumatic deaths. The original intention was if you got into a car accident, you wouldn't die. But now it's being used actively to murder his wife, and only to kill him once in her stead. But like every single story in there has something along those lines where there was like a really poignant moment of like, how far can we take this? Like this idea of this modern time, let's just push it a little bit farther and talk about the ways that could be difficult for people's mental health, or what else is going on. The last story, I think, feels COVID-y, but also important. Everybody in the world loses the ability to taste food. Like, food just tastes like plastic. It's some sort of disease, and it follows a mother and her daughter who's a teenager, and the mother, after this experience where everybody loses taste, becomes a artist who tries to replicate the feeling of eating foods that people remember or really love in other ways. So it's like a performance art thing where she's building like using lights and colors and sensations to try and sort of bring the memory of eating these foods back now that you can't actually taste them anymore. Meanwhile, her daughter feels like she can't connect with her mom in any way, or that her mom doesn't understand what's going on. And the mom is musing about how, because her child was so young when she lost the ability to taste, that she's never going to like really miss food. It's just a way of life now. And that the job that she has, where she's providing people with these experiences, is going to die with their generation. And it becomes this discussion of like, when we lose something that we think is so important to ourselves inherently as people, but we can still see people continuing on and living on, and the younger generations are just living as if that's normal, but you know that they're missing out on stuff. It was just a really interesting discussion cutting back and forth between these two women who feel like they cannot reach each other across a generational divide, which I think is something that a lot of people feel even without something so monumental as losing an entire sense, essentially, as a group of people. So, yeah. Multiple 5-star stories in this one, multiple times where I was like, I need to bring out a highlighter and highlight these sort of thoughts and feelings. It really exemplifies what I love about magical realism, which is the ways that pushing boundaries can reflect back on the themes in a way that makes you think more about how that would actually manifest in the real world, even though something like this is never going to happen. And again, it's monsters of the 21st century, so a lot of it is negative. It's deep and difficult to read. But I enjoyed every single one of them and had such a good time when reading it. Even though I know it's definitely not for everyone, necessarily. Nah. It's a good collection. I enjoyed it. I'm glad I own it. I have sticky notes. It's a good time.
Yeah, I mean, it's so, like, just as you were talking, just, like, thinking about multiple analogs for, like, the fears that we have as a society.
Yeah.
And also just the contradiction of, like, we're so afraid of AI, but we keep pushing it.
Yep.
Right? And I'm not saying everyone is doing that equally, but it's just, like, when you're in that moment of, like, I see the train wreck up ahead.
Yeah.
And, like, how can you even imagine what that would look like? Because, like, obviously, as someone who does a lot with early American history, and you see that joke of all the time about, like, well, they couldn't have even imagined, like, social media was a horror the founders couldn't have even imagined.
Yeah.
And it's just like, so what's out there still coming that we can't even put
towards? Yeah. It's one of the AI is a unique thing because I feel like at our current place now, looking back at social media, I feel like I'm like, oh, maybe we should not have had this thing. But I don't think when social medias were starting, that was something that I felt. Whereas I feel now with AI, there's a very large group of people who are staunchly against it. And then there's a class of people who are like pushing it on everybody else, whether you like it or not, it's going to be part of your life. You don't get to choose whether YouTube auto-generates the comment responses to your comments, or if the email gives you a description of what the email that you didn't even want to read is and then writes a response automatically to that. Like,
but technically, what you just described is the same reaction that everybody had to seatbelts.
Right.
Which is what everybody was really, not everybody, but like there was a giant class of the American, or of people, particularly in America. I only know the American context. Don't ask me for the global one.
Yeah.
Which was like, I don't need a seatbelt. We've been riding around in our cars fine without a seatbelt. You're like putting me in a seatbelt is infantilizing.
Yeah.
Like I'm an adult and I can do what I want. And then there was like the government and like, you know, safety standards being like, seatbelts are required and we're going to pass laws, and people were really upset about that. Yeah. But it's the flip side of like, that saves lives.
Yeah, I don't feel like AI is saving any lives. It's just
no, but I'm just saying that like you could analog that as well.
No,
like,
I know. I agree. You're right. That is something outside of my lifetime that probably had a similar upset at being implemented against your will.
I just think like going back to Michaela's book before we like, because I could also talk about this for 4 million years because I'm so sick of talking about it.
No, it's okay.
No, I just think that it's like there is something to it being around versus the anxiety of it, and it being spell check versus something that we feel like is going to steal our humanity. That then like adds I don't know. I don't think personally I would ever sit down and read Michaela's book unless she made me. But at the same time, like I feel like that's one of those books that I really respect the variety of even just the few short stories that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Of like tapping into those different anxieties that we have as people about this, and then because again, all of them connect to anxieties we already have, right? It's just that this adds this extra layer, like.
Yes.
You know, the one about true crime, right? I mean, that's why I mentioned true crime generally. Is I'm just like, what is the disconnect in the brain here that like causes us to do this as people? And now we have this extra thing or this new thing that then adds to that. Because listen to me. My college students who are using AI, some of them, most of them, I will say, in my classes, know how to use it as a tool. And those who are using it as more than a tool would probably have been cheating in some other way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They have this extra thing. So, like, people who are like, it's causing more. No.
Yeah.
The people who are going to cheat are the people using AI.
Yeah. I'm not one of the AI people who's like, there's no use for it ever, but I am one of those people who's like, please stop forcing me to use it when I don't want to. That's where I'm at. Like, I don't want you to preemptively AI stuff. If somebody wants to use it for this purpose, not my job. But now you're preemptively writing responses to the comments that we get. You're preemptively giving me a summary of the email I just got instead of saying, do you want a summary? Because I can read the email. I don't feel the need to offload that thing. Like, but you're forcing me to, and that's where I have an issue with it. But again, seatbelts. I don't know. I get it.
I mean, I don't. To be very clear, I do not think this is actually analogous to seatbelts. I just think that, like,
do save lives.
It's always like my back end around of like people like, oh, the government is forcing us to do dumb things, and I'm like, well, sometimes we need seatbelts.
Yeah. Unless,
so it's like, it's not always like a, there's never like a black and white version of that's just my thing. I watched some video clips of people like protesting against seatbelts, and it's like really, it's
one of the stories in here is also sort of about that. It follows a woman who's suicidal, but the government has made it impossible to commit suicide. Like, all of the tall buildings have bars and chain link fence, so you can't jump off them. And it's her eventually using a thing that shouldn't be used for suicide as a suicide, where it's like you can put a thing inside of this box and you can fast forward and rewind its life cycle. So the introduction is a frog. Like, you can see the tadpole, and then you can fast forward, and now it's a frog. So it's meant to be used as like a science thing, or like some way to look at how things are going to degrade over time, a tool. But then she gets inside the box and fast forwards herself through her entire life to get to the end of it. So it's a discussion of like, should people have the agency to choose to end their life if that's truly what they want, or do we want to let the government protect people? So there is like even a story about that, of like, should people be allowed to have the agency to do something recklessly because we have free will, or should there be somebody to stand in the way of something like that happening? Which that's the thoughts for philosophers, not for me. So, yeah, like, it's in here. There's all of these anxieties about stuff that's going on. So, yeah. I really liked it. Probably 5 stars, 4.5, either way. Highly recommend it if it's something that sounds interesting to you. I understand it's not for everyone.
We are going to ignore that I have a bad case of the stripes. We're just gonna ignore that in the world here. We're gonna let this be. And yes, this window is closed. This is as close as this window gets. So whatever. We would like to thank Emily and Des for not only hanging out with us tonight, but for hanging out throughout the clown car of scheduling that has been not just this roundtable, but also the roundtable before this, which got pushed by like a month and then was late to go up. Listen, guys, we all know it's hard to live right now.
Life be lifing.
Yeah, life be life. And so we are just deeply, deeply appreciative of Des and Emily and all of our friends in the Reading Roundtable family who have just been doing this with us and willing to roll with the punches and make this happen, because it truly is so fun to come and hear about these books that, like I said, I may not pick up on my own, but I really enjoy hearing about both either why you liked them or why you didn't. I like it when we don't like them too. Because this is something that allows us to just come together as friends and hang out, and that is a beautiful, beautiful thing right now. However, in terms of books people bring to reading roundtables and we may actually read, before we close this out, we are going to bring back around our bracket. So if you didn't see, Michaela and I have a special challenge this year for our Buddy Reading Challenge, which is a book bracket of different books Reading Roundtable participants have brought, and we're having participants vote books forward in brackets, till eventually there will be one for each Michaela and I that we will read. And we have done the initial round, and so we are now putting books together that have already been pushed forward and voted, and we probably will be seeing the final book pick in July or August. should be July, but this reading roundtable also should have been in May. So I leave flexibility for everything because life be lifing.
Yep.
So Emily and Des have decided what to put forward for me and Michaela. So I will let you guys take it away. What is the book that we are moving forward? I guess Des, will start with you for Michaela.
We chose Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree for Michaela.
Just because you like it.
Oh yeah, it's so good. I have the book on my shelf right now. I could get up and get it if you wanted me to. Obviously, we had to pick that.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
I'm still shocked you haven't read it.
It's true.
I'm still shocked neither of us have read it, really.
Yeah.
Which is... And Emily, for me...
Yeah, I chose The Personal Librarian because it's either going to be, like... I don't know. It looks like a book about yearning, and it looks like there's gonna be some fuck shit in it, and I want you to have that, so... I married a librarian, I know what I'm about.
Anne did say it was one of her favorite books of all time. So, we'll take that for what it is. So yeah, we're really excited, and we have not, I think, posted the bracket on social media in a while, but Michaela did make a beautiful graphic that may or may not show up there. We don't know. Life be lifin'. Will we be back with another video before our next reading roundtable? We don't know. We're trying, though. Our next reading roundtable should also come out in June. We're going to double up this month to try to catch up to where we were in our schedule. The second June reading roundtable is on theme, so we have two friends who have agreed to join us, and they're just going to bring whatever. And then we actually are going to probably have a couple of themed months in a row coming up. So look forward to that. There's some pretty specific themes that we're really excited about that also tie into our reading challenge. So maybe go check out that video and see if you can guess. But again, while we've had trouble making our individual videos, we have always come back and made these reading roundtables work because we just love hanging out with our friends and we're so appreciative of them. So thank you guys, and we'll see you next time. Bye.